Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Method Ministries. I am here with Cody Lawrence from Spare No Arrows. What's up, Cody?
Hey, good to be here, Lucas.
Good. Are you an archer, by the way?
Am I what?
An archery man? You can
Oh,
spare no arrows?
no. Oh, no. It's just from the Bible verse. I like destroying Babylon, and so that's why I named it that.
Whoa. Okay. Wait. Which Bible verse is this?
Yeah, I think it's Jeremiah 50:14, and it is so Babylon is under judgment, and God is basically telling all of the nations, good and bad, to destroy Babylon. It says, "All you who bend the bow, spare no arrows, for she has sinned against the Lord."
Oh wow.
So that's kind of what I want to encompass with my own podcast.
Yeah, dude. I got to change my name now from Method Ministries to something cool like that. Spare No Method Ministries. But yeah, so Cody and I are going to talk about because Cody is in the CREC world and church, correct?
Correct.
And so we're going to talk about Young Restless and Anon. You probably heard of Young Restless and Reformed, YRR, a couple years back. They were primarily in the Acts 29 churches. That kind of dissipated now. They went woke, Acts 29. I'm hoping and thinking within 10 years they'll probably just be done as they say they're not a denomination. I think they are.
Yeah.
But now we're going to talk about the new phenomenon, which is primarily on Twitter, X, Young, Restless, and Anon, because a lot of these accounts are anonymous, and even what's going on with this Antioch declaration. So kind of a broad talking point, but I think it's important that we talk about it and that people be aware of what's going on, because I don't just think that this is really just a reformed thing going on. If you look in the culture, maybe you'll agree with this, Cody, there's a lot of these same talking points taking place, and primarily with these people who are just, as they like to say, they're just noticing that certain people are in power are falling within one category, which is they're Jews. These Jews are in power, and they're influencing and causing all of our cultural, societal problems. And you can see this rhetoric with Candace Owens. She's big on pushing it. The Tate brothers as well. And what's the other guy's name? Dan Bazillionaire, right? Is that he was on Piers Morgan talking about how the world would be better off without Israel, and this leads into Nazi ideology, and so this is really
And
connected.
these were the same talking points. These were the same kind of arguments that the Nazis themselves used to make people hate the Jews so that they could commit their atrocities.
Yeah, and it's interesting too. I don't know. Did you ever go to an Acts 29 church?
Actually, I did. Yeah, that was the last church I went to before they essentially kicked me out for being conservative.
Yeah. So I went to two as well in New Jersey. And so I was there in 2020 when they went really hardcore woke, and every sermon was about racism, against conservatives, against white people, and all this nonsense. And
Yeah.
it was really a cultural movement because they were going along with the culture. The culture was pushing social justice, and so they wanted to be relevant, and they were going along with it. And now it looks like instead of Young, Restless, and Reform, we have Young, Restless, and Anon, and now they're going along with the culture movement, which is we should hate on Jews. It's cool to hate on Jews, and we should be more sympathetic to countries like the third or Nazi Germany
Yeah.
and everything. So, how would you define what we're talking about? If somebody wants to get into on this conversation, like what do we mean by Young, Restless, and Anon, Cody?
Yeah, to me, it's this really complicated, jumbled up thing because it's to me at least it's hard to nail down the specific kind of person. Like we can generalize. I think the people with the red profile pictures with the glowing blue eyes, but not all of them are like that. And or we could you listed a handful of people like, but it's not like an organized movement. It's not it seems more like a cultural shift where these various different ideologies are kind of coming together, and a lot of these people share a lot of the same beliefs. They don't necessarily share all of the beliefs, but it seems to have this increase right now in the reform community. But like you said, it's all over the place. It's in secularism too, and this is just because I think the reformed world is becoming influenced, like you said, by the culture also. And to me, this is like the right. I've talked about this on my podcast before, where I don't consider these people conservative. I don't consider these people on the right because the values of the right does not include hating people for where they come from or how they look.
Hmm.
And so I don't want to call these people on the right. I've heard them being called the woke right or the reactionary right, things like that. So we can use that phrase, but
Yeah.
in my opinion, that they're not on the right. So, but it's kind of confusing to how to label these people exactly. But there just seems to be this kind of cultural zeitgeist of people that were conservative or label themselves as conservative who hate the left, like they hate the left, so they're kind of on our team in that regard. But the exact same stuff that the left does, where they hate people for how they look and where they come from, and they want to divide people up into social categories to oppress the people they don't like, which is Marxism. These people are doing exactly the same thing. They're just using the same tools of their enemies to accomplish their own goals. And people like us see this, and we are like, whoa, they're not with us. That's not what we should be doing.
Yeah. Well, what I found out is that they accept and use the term to describe themselves as the dissident right.
Yeah,
So they don't like the term woke right, but
sure.
they like that term. They're okay with that, which is very interesting because even they're acknowledging that it's not sufficient to be called conservative or conservative Christians. They have to distinguish themselves from even people within that sphere. So how do
Yeah,
they do that? Well, they use the term dissident right. And dissident means to basically oppose. And so they're trying to say that like guys like you and I who are against wokeness, CRT, who've, you've been fighting it, like I follow you on Instagram and you're clearly
mhm,
against all that nonsense.
yeah,
But they look at guys like us and they still want to throw us in this, if not a, they call it a mid Eva camp, or sometimes people use big Eva, but they even want to call us woke now. Like one of these guys on Twitter called me woke over the weekend because I'm not in the camp where I'm just noticing these. It's just a bunch of Jews in power, and I don't hate and show enough animosity towards these
yeah.
people.
And
Right
I've been called
now,
the same thing. I've been called woke too, and
you
that
have,
just
right?
goes to show you um, the level of thinking that a lot of these people are on. Like another thing that kind of characterizes the left is groupthink. People don't have the ability to use actual rational arguments and think for themselves, and so they just repeat the things that their favorite podcasters say without thinking things through. So obviously, we're not woke. I was kicked out of a church because I was not woke. I left a job because I was not woke during 2020. So like if people actually knew us or had the patience to know us or actually enacted Christian brotherly love towards one another and grace, then they would realize, well, they're obviously not woke. So why are they against these things? Let's talk about it.
And they were with us in 2020.
Yeah, right.
So these are the people that it's not like I'm you and I are not fighting people who were put us in 2020 and we were on opposite sides of the social justice movement. We were both opposed to it, and so now it's like fast forward 4 years later, I have some of my people or my friends who were, yeah, we both agreed and we were both against CRT wokeness, all that junk. But now there's a split because certain guys who were against it and who were faithful and solid, and even podcasters, big influencers, I was tuning in, listening to them, getting people to listen to them just to try to help fight wokeness going on.
Yeah,
But
same.
now these people, they look at us and they think basically that you and I, we were useful and helpful to fight that battle. But now we really got to go forward. Like it's not enough. Like I saw one of them say, it's not enough to just be anti-CRT. You have to now be sympathetic or pro against, like, again, like Israel and Jews, and you really got to play the race card really strong.
Yeah.
They like to talk about natural law and natural affections, and what they mean by that is that you should really love white people to such an extent that where it's like I should basically screw everybody else in a way where it's like, I love white people and screw everybody else because we're just the strong guys who are really going to show you what it means to be conservative.
Yeah, and something that I notice is based on what you just said, that's exactly what they're saying. And that sounds like because 2020 was such a traumatic experience for so many of us, and I fought that crap so hard. I see connections between the things that these people are saying that mostly is characterized by young men who are angry and most of them are white. And it's not racist to say that because they are predominantly white. And it's important because I kind of see where a lot of them are coming from, where like white people actually have been beat down for the
Mhm.
last decade and called racist and called all these other horrible things. And so a lot of people end up just being like, oh, yeah, maybe I am racist. Yeah, I'm going to become the monster that you think I am. But what they end up doing, what I notice is like when you say it's not enough to hate CRT, we need to hate the Jews too. That's exactly what the left said with people on their side. They would say, well, it's not enough to be an ally of LGBT. You have to be engaged in social justice. You have to be engaged in the culture protesting. And they would say things like, it's not enough just to be okay with black people. You have to be engaged in bringing white people to feel sorry for their whiteness.
Mhm.
It's identical arguments, but it's
Yeah.
just on the other side of the aisle. And if we hated that stuff back in 2020 when it was from the left, if we're being consistent, then we should equally hate that stuff when it appears to be coming from quote unquote our team.
Well, basically what they're saying is it's if you really look at what's going on, so what they and if you take their proposition to this logical conclusion,
Mhm.
they're saying it's not that the left was wrong per se, is that they were racist towards the wrong people.
Yeah,
They
right.
shouldn't have been racist towards us white people because they were racist. And it's ironic too because the people in 2020, and they exist now, but it's really kind of exposed and they're really weak right now at this point. Like Kamala
Sure.
lost because people, and not just Christians, but even non-Christians are woken up to the fact that this is all bunk. But they're racist towards white people, which is very ironic because they're supposed to be the ones who are anti-racist, right? But well, they're racist towards white people. But basically, these dissident right people, they're they're saying is that you were racist towards the wrong people. You really should have been racist towards Jews. And this is the exact same, and this is why I like to use the term woke right, not because I think it's accurate. It's basically, it's like me calling somebody gay. Like if I say you're acting gay, I don't actually mean that in a wooden literal sense where it's like you're an actual homosexual. I'm saying you're acting a certain way. And it
Yeah.
should be sufficient to be like, yeah, wake you, like slap you on the face and wake you up. So by me calling these people woke right, I'm saying you're acting like a woke leftist where you're playing this race card, you're playing this oppressor versus oppress critical race theory version where again white people are at the bottom, Jews are on top, and we have to wake people up to this meta narrative where they use a post-war consensus, which I talked about. I believe in it, just not in the sense in the way that they use it, and I don't think it's monolithic as if this thing explains absolutely everything for what's going on in this country, and we got to explode the narrative, and we got to be Nazi sympathizers now,
Sure.
and all the and all this junk, and this is in relation to this Antioch statement, which I do want to touch on too, because this is a statement now put out essentially targeted. What do you think it's accurate to say it's targeted towards these people?
Um, I don't know that the authors viewed it that way, and I don't know that I would say that myself, but we can talk
Okay.
about that. But the people who disagree with it absolutely think it was targeted towards them. Yeah.
Yeah, which says a lot, right? Because if you're reading this statement, it's very kosher.
I think so.
Like I joked on Twitter, the Antioch statement says like Nazis, Jew hate, racial vainglory, evil, and then these people respond and be like, "No, this is too poorly worded. I can't sign that. It doesn't make a lot of sense."
Yeah.
And I'm thinking to myself,
Or it was obviously rushed. Or one podcaster said it was like the language is so tedious. Like why? Because you disagree with it? Because they use full sentences? What's the problem with it exactly? Like
yeah,
there a lot of people are commenting on either the situation, like they're like, this situation is dumb that this is in, and we can talk about that. Like the situation that this was written in is dumb. Therefore, I disagree with the statement. Or they're like, well, I don't like the way that was worded, or the language is tedious, or whatever. Instead of like, why isn't anybody dealing with the actual content of the statement?
but not only that, it's like how clear could the statement be
Yeah.
where it just explicitly condemned something where their objection was to your point where because I listened to your podcast on the Antioch statement. It was really well done, by the way, really
Thanks.
well done. It's and you mentioned something along the lines where the people who want to complain not about the content, not about the substance of it, but want to complain that again, like it was rushed. Why would that be a sufficient grounds for you not to sign it? Is it true? let's
Yeah.
start there for one. Are Nazis evil? Is Jew hate a sin? Not,
Mhm.
well, you guys rushed to say this.
And
Well,
what if it was rushed?
yeah.
Is it true? Like, do you agree with what it says? Like, okay, it was rushed. What do you disagree with? Show me.
And why are you offended at this too? And why do you feel targeted? Because, let's face it, the people who are saying this, to your point, where it's okay, it's like, okay, maybe it wasn't, maybe it's not accurate to say it was targeted towards these people. But why do you feel that way about that? Could it be something in your message? Because, I will say a lot of these guys, they may not actually be guilty of those sins, but what they are guilty of is compromising and making a wide tent for these sins. And that's what my real contention is. Because I don't accuse people like Joel Webbin and Eric Kahn. I never accuse them of being racist or Jew haters. Not that I want to
Yeah,
make this
sure.
all about them, but let's just put a name on it. I'm not
Hmm.
accusing, I never have. But what I am accusing them of, and I think is accurate, is that they have and are making a wide tent for these people.
Yeah.
You could disagree with me on that. I don't know if you agree or
No, I
not.
agree. I think that's probably why Doug Wilson called Joel Webbin. I didn't see the con or the actual phrase or the context of the phrase, but evidently Doug Wilson called Joel Webbin a revoice pastor for Nazis. And I thought that was hilarious. And I think that was communicating an accurate point where it's like, you could have a good solid pastor speaking at a revoice conference, right? So like that doesn't necessarily mean you're gay or woke or whatever. Like
Yeah.
there are good quote unquote Acts 29 churches. There are good pastors running in really bad organizations. I talk a lot about the SBC and the corruption in the SBC. There are good pastors and good churches in the SBC. Should they be associating with the SBC? I don't think so. Should a good
Yeah.
church actually be associating with Acts 29? I don't think so. And so like if you find yourself metaphorically being a revoiced pastor for Nazis, maybe you should just stop associating yourself with this metaphorical revoice.
Yeah. Well, and what I pointed out too, it should throw a red flag if people who are actually subscribing to Nazi ideology, or as Doug Wilson says, side B Nazi,
Yeah.
if they feel as if you're giving them a home and a place, that should be uh something, throwing a red flag that what is in my message that is making these people feel as if they're understanding me to say, hey, come to our place, we'll welcome you, we'll accept you. That should be a real problem, because if I'm a pastor and I'm preaching a message where people who are in the progressive world, who are Marxists or social justice warriors, and who are voting for Biden or Kamala Harris, and who are pro-choice Christians, quotation mark Christians,
Yeah.
and they feel as if they have a place in my church, why would I not stop and think about, wait a minute, am I compromising? Am I not being clear enough in the message of the gospel that you can't subscribe to the world and follow Jesus Christ? That should be a big red flag.
Yeah, and I think at this point, what a lot of those guys would say, even like Joel Webbin and Eric Kahn, even the, if they're not racist, whatever, like let's grant that, they would still say, well, hey, if you would kick the reformers out of your church, like Martin Luther said some horribly racist stuff against the Jews. And that is in the quote unquote reformed tradition, because of course, every little single quote that a reformer said is in the reformed tradition, according to evidently people like Stephen Wolfe,
Yeah.
which is completely false and ridiculous. Like, no, John Calvin believed in the perpetual virginity of Mary. Is that in the reformed tradition? Of course not. Like not every thought that passed through a reformer's mind is in the reformed tradition. The reformed tradition is based on sola scriptura and the basic fundamental ideas of the Reformation, and not every single word of the reformers, because the purpose of the Reformation was a return to Scripture. But anyway, when these people say, when we go along this line, they're like, well, hey, if you would excommunicate Martin Luther for his horrible racist stuff that he said, then you're not truly reformed.
Well, not only that, but I do like to point out, wait a minute, you guys are Baptists. You
Yeah,
should
right.
you should look at what Martin Luther said about Baptists and what he did to Baptists.
Yeah.
And with him and Uric, how do you say this? Zwingli.
Yeah.
What did he say with him over matters of the Lord's Supper? He says, I would rather sup with what did he say? Harsh words, because Zwingli had a memorial view of communion, where Luther had his consubstantiation view. Whether you think it's an accurate term or not, whatever.
Sure.
and he said he would rather sup with the Pope in hell or something really harsh.
Yeah,
And he
right.
split with him. And
Yeah.
so as Baptists to come along, and by the way, they're theonomic, and I'm not trying to say this is a bash theonomic podcast, because I don't know if you are, which is fine.
I'm a theonomist.
Okay, yeah, but and you would probably agree with me that Luther wasn't.
Yeah. I mean, I think people are inconsistent, right? And so I think
Yeah.
maybe in some ways he was theonomic. I mean, just like I would say John Calvin, I would say every reformed person is inconsistently reformed. Like
Mm.
we're not completely consistent. And so you could point out things in my theology that's not reformed, just like we can point out things in Luther and Calvin's theology that's not reformed.
Well, and I think it's important because these guys are trying to act like that they're just retrieving what was lost. Where it's like, surprise, the church actually hated Jews too.
Yeah.
And they were actually all just ethno nationalists like us, which Christian nationalism didn't exist until I think like the 19th century. So this wasn't even a thing, by the way. And you know what it is too. I've encountered enough Eastern Orthodox and even Roman Catholics online to recognize that when anybody tries to say that their view is just what the whole entire church to believe,
Yeah.
to really realize that that is bunk, because church is not a monolithic, one size fits all. Every single person believed and agreed with me on this. There is a consensus on things like, the Trinity, Jesus's divinity,
Sure.
Fundamental doctrines like that. But it's definitely not, every church, prior to the 19th century just all hated Jews like me and all just played this race card. And you guys are just woke if you disagree with me. Like
Yeah.
even Stephen Wolfe, like you said, like Mary's perpetual, virginity. John Wesley believed in that too.
Sure.
They were also historicists when it came to the book of Revelation, which pretty much every Protestant believed that the Pope was not a Antichrist, but the Antichrist, the beast of Revelation 13. And I know that Stephen Wolfe probably doesn't believe that. I know, Joel Webman doesn't believe that. He's a preterist.
Mm.
So it's like, give me a break. Like, like you are not the epitome of the inheritors of the Reformation.
Yeah, I agree. It's really arrogant to claim that I am truly reformed and my way is the right way. Because, I mean, as Christians, we should realize like we're not perfect, we're sinners, and the standard of our faith is not actually any kind of tradition, even the Reformed tradition, even though the Reformed tradition is true, even though the things that were brought out in the Reformation are true, actual biblical truths. Those things are rooted in Scripture. They're not rooted in something that John Calvin said. If John Calvin never existed, if Martin Luther never existed, what we believe about the Bible would still be true. And when people try to hijack that and say like, well, my very narrow view of nationalism and hating Jews is in the Reformed tradition, and none of these other people are truly Reformed, then not only are you actually separating with other actual Reformers because they disagreed on these things, but you're also arguing the way a Catholic argues, where Catholics can pick and choose. I interact with a lot of Catholics online too, and I've noticed that we recognize, if we actually look at history, that there were disagreements in the Catholic Church all the time, and by even popes would disagree doctrinally with other popes. And so essentially what a Catholic has to do, what they are required to do, is pick a random thing from history and say, that's my tradition. And that's not what we should be doing as Reformed Christians, but that's what a lot of these guys are doing. And it's not surprising, because of I see this as intimately connected to the Crusades business that kind of ramped up right before all of this stuff started happening. I see them all as connected. And this weird tendency, I don't know how you think about the Crusades, but this weird tendency to like idolize the Crusades as this wonderful, godly, amazing thing. Not to say it didn't have good consequences, and not to say it wasn't good for the world, but to say that it was like a religiously and morally good thing to do in general is strange to me, and also very Catholic.
Oh yeah, it is, because it was very Catholic, and that's why a lot of Roman Catholics are fine with the Crusades, because of them. This was a merger of state and church, where it was a theocracy or Christendom. So it wasn't just like the Ogden boys strapping up with their ARs and going to kill some Muslims, but it almost sounds like that's what they're trying to push, like the church can actually go and do things like this, which it does make me concerned by what they mean by that. Because it's one thing like just war theory. There is times to actually pick up arms and defend your country. Like World War II. I think the Allies were the good guys. I'm not saying they're perfect.
Mhm.
That's just what I think. Like, yeah, the Allies were the good guys. Nazis were not the bad. I'm sorry, Nazis were not the good guys. The Allies were. And you can be a Christian and join the army and be in the military, but for them just to use that, it was very suspicious about what they were trying to communicate in that. And I just saw some tweets, and it's like, what are you guys actually getting at? It sounds like a call to revolution, is what you guys are saying.
It
I
kind
don't
of
know
feels
what
that
you
way.
think.
Yeah. No, yeah, it kind of feels that way. I think after so long of being beaten down and making young white men feel like they are actually oppressed, and we were and we are and we have been. And there are actually systems in place and like jobs that exist that are actually discriminatory against white people. And so all this is true, but the the response that we're having, again, this is another connection with 2020. Like, this is exactly the same response that the left had in 2020, and these people still exist for these exact same kind of things, and we shouldn't be participating in those things.
Did you read Rusty Reno's book Return of the Strong Gods, by the way?
No, not
Oh,
yet.
okay. So that's basically one of the top guys who made up that term post-war consensus. I read the book, interviewed him, and it was a great point. But a lot of these guys who were in this, camp, the young restless and anon, and who didn't want to sign the Antioch Statement, and who are pushing this crusade, LARPing is what I'm going to call it.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it is LARPing. I mean, what else would you call pretending to be a knight in armor and going off into war like that? That is the definition of LARPing.
And it's like, dude, you're either a pastor or a podcaster. Like, you're not a crusader. Right. Like, let's be real. And it's like, look at the bodies on some of these guys as well. It's like, you're not this fit. Like, it honestly, just to pause here for a minute. There's this one guy I'm friends with on Facebook, and he posts these memes where it's this white guy / crusader. He's really big and fit, and he's defending his family. And I'm thinking, dude, your body, your physique is not anywhere near this. What are you doing? Yeah. It looks very effeminate, and it does look very nerdy. And like, I'm not trying to make fun of him, but it honestly, it looks very nerdy.
I'll make fun of him for you. I hate that stuff. Yeah, it's like, it's role playing, it's LARPing. And there's a time and a place for that, but it's video games. It's not X. It's not your real social life. It's playing pretend. It's trans. Like, you said these people are acting gay earlier. I think they're acting trans. They're pretending to be someone that fundamentally they're not. They actually believe that they are crusaders who are going to go out and save America, which fundamentally shows a misunderstanding of the gospel. It does, because the thing that's going to save America, if in fact America is to be saved, is not knights in shining armor holding banners with the cross on it where we kill Muslims for Jesus like they did in the Crusades. The thing that's going to save America is the gospel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, amen. Just to the point what you were making about like how a lot of these young men. Well, you know what? I don't even like to say young men, because I don't think a lot of them are young men. Like, I don't know what they mean by young men, unless they mean like 20, 25, because a lot of these guys are in their 30s.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So it's let's call it what it is, men. It's not young men. It's not like these poor little 18-year-olds where they want to, to Doug Wilson's point, like Revoice for Nazis. Revoice is an LGBT movement by wolves who want to make a wide tent for gays and transsexuals into the church. And how they do that is by painting them as these poor little victims, right? They're church hurt people. Yeah. We just got to let them in, where people right now who are pushing this Revoice for Nazis, they want to victimize these people. They're angry young men. Well, one, you shouldn't be defined by anger. Mm-hmm. Like, why is that something where we just have to be defined by? Because if they really are angry, well, that's a problem. Like, you should not just be this bitter person. But a lot of them are angry, and I understand why, because again, they have been. If you're white, if you're conservative, if you're Christian, that you are hated by the left, and they've been pushing and telling everybody to hate you, not just in the state but in the churches as well. But it's ironic because they want to push this post-war consensus, which Rusty Reno in his book, and I interviewed and confirmed it. He warned against overcorrection. He called it iconoclasm. Which to me, iconoclasm is like an overcorrection.
Mhm.
But besides the point of that, because well, what? Let me just say this: iconoclasm says we should get rid of icons because we don't want idolatry. So it's an overcorrection.
Mhm.
And Rusty Reno warns against iconoclasm, which the post-war consensus can actually push people towards the perverse gods of blood and soil and
Sure.
white nationalism and World War II revisionism. And so these same people who are saying, "Oh, it's a post-war consensus fault," are the same people who are blood and soil, white nationalists, and World War II revisionists. Where, according to Rusty Reno's definition, you're actually a product of the post-war consensus and not somebody who's fighting the post-war consensus. And it shows a level of intellect that these guys have, where they're trying to use something that they don't even understand themselves and are actually products of.
Yeah. Yeah, that goes to show like that so many people have said to me, not even from what are they called, stone choir
Yeah.
guys who says like Hitler was a faithful Christian, but I've seen a lot of people even in my own comments section have said, "Hey, Hitler was Germany, World War II Germany was a Christian nation. That was the most recent example of a Christian nation that we have in the world." And I was like, that just shows such a misunderstanding of history. Even if you read the story of Bonhoeffer, like yes, there was a German Christian church, but do you want to say that Jehovah's Witness are Christians or Mormons are Christians? People can call themselves Christians, but that doesn't make them Christian.
Mhm.
Like Hitler wanted to create, yes, a German Christian church because he wanted to destroy Christianity because he saw it as a threat. He saw
Yeah.
religion as a threat. And so he wanted to combine state and church and have the state be over the church. And yeah, and a lot of people, one, because they don't understand history, and two, because they don't understand theology, think that was a completely cool thing to do. And again, that's another thing that the left wanted to do in 2020. They wanted to combine the state and the church and be like, we get to control when your church shuts down. We get to tell you how far apart to space in your pews. We get to tell you which music you can sing or not. And they want to combine church and state, but biblical Christianity understands that there needs to be a separation of church and state, and that the church does not have total authority over the state, and the state does not have total authority over the church. This is something we should have learned, and it's yet another thing that we, or a lot of us, unfortunately, didn't.
Well, it's a push for power. They want to push. They want to gain power, and then they want to wield it for their own agenda. Is
Yeah,
what it is. And it's both a scramble for it. They know that they're at a war with the left. The left wants power so that they can wield it and control everything, including when you can and cannot worship God. Well, the right wants it. Sorry, the dissident right wants to do that because the real right people aren't like that. The real conservatives are not like that. But what do you have to do that? You have to push an agenda, question the narrative, question history, and then disrespect your elders because the same LGBT progressive Christians will say that, oh, guys like you and I are just products of our parents who taught us that traditional marriage is biblical and is actually not. Well, then now these young restless and anon characters are saying people like you and I are just boomer brains and we should just be disregarded because they're the way that it should be and they're going to tell us like it is. Like
yeah,
there's
it's
too many
ironic.
tactics.
The people who engage in subversive tactics like that in any kind of discussion are always the bad guys. The people who want to censor or destroy the other side without their opinions being heard are always the bad guys. And so whenever I hear somebody, even if it sounds like something I agree with, who's like, they're just a boomer, don't listen to them. I'm like, whoa, what are you scared of their opinion? Like maybe I should listen to their opinion.
Yes. Speaking of that, did you hear what Joel Webben said about the it's funny that I bring this up. Do you hear what Joel Webben said about the Haitian IQ levels?
Oh, I saw that clip and it was absolutely disgusting and atrocious. Wow.
Yeah.
And it was evidently factually incorrect. Like he was like, you're what, not qualified to be a pastor if you don't believe Haitians have a 47 IQ on average or something like that. Whatever
Yeah.
number it was.
Something like that. So yeah, Haitians have this IQ level. And if you're a pastor, if you disagree with this, then you're lying and you're not qualified for ministry.
Right.
So people are rightfully pointing out, wait, dude, how does this work in your view? Because you're saying that you can question World War II, be a Holocaust denier, and it's not a creedal statement. You can be a Christian. That's okay, Cody.
Right.
But if you want to disagree with me on Haitian IQ levels, you're
That's
not
too
qualified.
far. Yeah, that's
I don't
across the line.
understand. I don't understand how does this work? Like, how can you sit there and be like, yep, yep, 100%, because he has his two other podcasters with him. And I was like, yep, absolutely. How does this, like, I generally want to know and get behind, ask them, how does this work?
It
Where do you
doesn't.
not see this double standard
It's
here?
horribly inconsistent. And and just so people know, I'm not biased against Joel Webb, and I used to highly respect him. I have a
Same.
picture of me and my wife with Joel Webb, and I had a good conversation with him at Fight Laugh Feast a couple years ago when he went. And I really like the guy. I listen to his podcast every week. And I have slowly, like, my respect for him has been plummeting recently because of his behavior and his arrogance, and like, I'm the best evangelical Christianity's got. It's awful. And like, I'll say it, we shouldn't take those people seriously.
Yeah. No,
They
yeah,
act like that.
100%. By the way, so do you want to give us a rundown of why you signed the Antioch statement, just so we can maybe talk a little bit more and touch on that a little bit more?
Yeah, my impression is that it was meant for churches to sign. I didn't sign it individually. I don't know if my church has signed it yet, but if it is something I could sign individually, I should. Anyway, I support it. It is reasonable, and I support it. And the reason that is because what it says is true. One of the biggest contentions that people have against the Antioch statement is because they disagree with the situation. And I'm not even totally up to speed personally on the situation that it was in, like this weird little food fight between Joel Webb and Tobias
Yeah.
Riemann Schlatter,
Ryman Schneider.
Ryman Schneider,
Yeah.
and they're buddies, and the other team's buddies, whatever. Like, I don't care about that. I just care about, even in my Antioch statement video, a lot of people are like, one thing I tried to emphasize in my podcast was, I just want to look at the words and I want to see if they're true. I don't want to analyze the situation, or like the background, or like what else is happening in the world right now. I just want to look at the words and see if they're true or not. And a lot of people had an issue with that. Like, no, you can't separate this from Tobias because he did this and that. And I'm like, watch me. I'm separating it in my head right now. It's not hard to do.
Yeah.
And those other guys released the statement on Christian nationalism, which I'm also going to read and review objectively and see if it's true or not, totally separated from this situation. And so what the Antioch statement basically just says is, when Paul confronted Peter in Antioch, it was because Peter was ashamed or showed some level of disdain for the Jews, because for the Gentiles, because when the Jews came, he separated himself from the Gentiles for whatever reason. He didn't want to be seen by the Jews hanging out with the Gentiles, or maybe he was afraid of the Jews' response. So regardless of what it was, Peter was being a coward, and he was misunderstanding something very fundamental about the gospel. And what a lot of these people would say at this point is, whoa, you're trying to connect social. This is like what the left did with the social justice movement. You're trying to connect social actions to the gospel. And to that I say, I don't have to, because the Bible does that. The Bible, like, Paul's response to Peter in that was, Peter misunderstood the gospel of Jesus Christ. Like, that's what it says in the Bible. It said that there was some kind of misunderstanding that Peter had about the gospel. And so Paul then confronted him and sought to correct that. So our behavior, how we love others, and who we want to welcome into the body of Christ or separate from the body of Christ, has very serious implications on what we actually believe about the gospel. And so the Antioch statement is basically saying, you shouldn't hate people because of how they look or where they come from. And a lot of other things basically along those lines. And for the vast majority of it, it all seemed very self-evidently true and obvious, like stuff that shouldn't even need to be said. But it seems like the reason that it was written was just because there's this cultural shift in this direction, and these very wise older pastors who have seen things like this happen in the past, they want to draw a line. And also, Doug Wilson came out with a good podcast episode where one of the guys that's going to be on Trump's cabinet is a CREC guy.
Yeah, Hegseth, right? Pete
And
Hegseth.
that was great, where he was like, if he gets confirmed and people ask him questions about this stuff, he could just point to this Antioch statement and say, like, no, here's my opinion. I don't actually hate Jews.
Yeah.
And like,
it's a safeguard.
A very politically astute move, I think, on the the side of the CREC and just anybody who signs the Antioch statement on his behalf. I think that's really smart.
Yeah, absolutely. Uh, so when I've seen some Twitter posts and Facebook posts and YouTube videos of those who don't want to sign it, the reasons for not doing so are very identical for people who say that they don't like Trump or don't want to vote for Trump. Well, his attitude and it's just the way that he said it. It's nothing of substance. It's like, okay, none of these guys are saying, well, I disagree that Nazis are evil. I disagree that Jew hate is wrong. It's just like, oh, it was rushed and it's connected to this.
Another connection with the way the left acted.
Yeah.
Acts. It's like, well, we don't like their tone. What are you, a wuss? Like, what do you care?
It's very effeminate behavior.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very effeminate behavior.
Let's face things head on and determine if what the words are true or not. Like, who cares about somebody's tone? What are you, sensitive?
Yeah. Because I look at, again, like Trump, right? His policy. I look at his policy as my starting ground. Is that good? Or should I be effeminate and be like, well, it's just the way he talks and he should be nicer and rub my belly, sing me a bedtime song.
Rub my belly.
It's like, dude, are you gay? Like, are you being gay?
Sure.
But they are. They honestly are. And these guys want to be painted as these crusade guys and they're the tough guys, where your biggest complaint to a statement is that it was rushed. Like, dude, are you really this tough guy? Or are you just like putting up a front with your AI memes telling them to generate some pictures of you that you're nothing like, not only in appearance but even in character, which is exhibiting or being demonstrated in how you're protesting this statement because of this factor and that factor. And honestly, I think all of this is just a cop out. The real reason they don't want to sign it is because they do feel that it's targeting them. They do feel offended, or they know that this is going to lose clout points with their followers, because there does seem to be a big Anon account out there, or swarm of them, where they are, like, if you look at some like polls too, like they do like their podcast polls, where I don't know if you saw that one Reform podcast poll going on where Stone Choir was on there.
Oh, I don't think so.
Yeah, there was like this. It was Stone Choir versus somebody else, and Stone Choir won, which Stone Choir should not have been on there at all. Like, they're not even a Christian. They're not Christians.
Sure,
those guys are not Christians at all. Right. Clear. I mean, those guys. Corey Mahler is a demon. Like, and I'm not even, with the stuff that he says, that is not an understatement.
Yeah, it's atrocious. He should be church disciplined, and
he is. Yeah, he's kicked out from the Lutheran Church. He's excommunicated.
Right, and so actual Christians shouldn't take him seriously until he repents and joins another faithful local church.
But if you say something, these red avatar blue eyes will just start swarming your the chat.
Yeah,
they'll swarm these polls for Stone Choir, and I think a lot of these pastors don't want to sign it because they know that they got this following of non accounts, young restless and anons, and if they sign this, then they're going to be called out by them, and so they're capitulating, they're compromising to the masses, which is compared to the young restless and reformed, totally different phenomenon going on, because at least the young restless and reformed are going to churches.
Yeah.
These people online, you don't even know who the heck they are. You don't even know if they're Christians. They're just putting crusade and Christian nationals in their bio. You have no idea who the heck they are. So it's like you're giving so much away for people that you don't even know, and you don't even know. Let's face it, if they're real, they might be a bot for all you know.
Right. And again, yet another connection with the left, because, and ironically, they call us mid-Eva or Big Eva type people. The thing that Big Eva is fueled on is doing what the crowd likes. Somebody even responded to my comment or my Antioch statement video and said something like, yeah, just go with the crowd or something like that. And I'm like, dude, my nerve endings have been seared back in 2020 because of the stuff that we went through. Like, I could not care less about what the crowd thinks.
Yeah.
In fact, what I am saying right now is evident that I don't care what the crowd thinks, because I don't care if people hate me or if people call me a woke or whatever. Like, who cares? I just want to speak truth.
Yeah. How is your CREC church, by the way? Like, has it been affected by any of this, or is any?
No, our elders are keeping up to speed on this stuff, and the whole CREC is like the presiding minister Yuri Brito is like very on the up and up on this, and like is very serious about making sure all of the elders are watching out for this stuff happen. So no, like we're solid.
Yeah, because I'm wondering if or how much this will actually affect local churches. I've heard some people that have had some, n- people here and there complain and maybe leave, but it hasn't been so big. But I'm wondering if it will get bigger because who knows down the road if this will grow and grow, because there does seem to be a cultural movement again, like even like people like Candace Owens who are coming out, oh, it's the Jews, and I'm just asking questions, guys. Oh, but the Jews are actually behind everything. And like Churchill, like Daryl Cooper, Churchill was the chief main villain, not Hitler. And so this rhetoric is increasing, and I'm wondering if it's going to hit the churches, because this is how it started with social justice. Like, what was it, 2011, 2012, where Tim Keller and David Platt were planting seeds,
Yeah.
and then 2020 hit, and that's where they really ramped it up, and that's where it really
Revoice
affected churches.
pastors, in other words, that's where it all started. And now it's the revoice pastors for Nazis.
Yeah, white tent Nazism, I call it.
Yeah. And it's not like necessarily that these people, like we've said, are actual racists or Nazis or whatever, but they are opening the door for people to continue on that line of thought. And what a good pastor would do is see the trajectory that a certain person is on. And like a layman like myself sees the obvious cultural trajectory and sees the trajectory of a lot of, I mean, even social media accounts that I follow that I really appreciated, they've started posting garbage. And it's like, my goodness, why are these people going in this direction? And they're posting such hateful stuff, and they're making fun of Jews and things. And like, that's very weird. But a good pastor, if they see people on this trajectory, they know to draw the line, and they say, maybe don't go that way anymore. and instead, what a lot of these people are doing, either they don't have pastors or they're being anonymous, and so their pastors don't know that they're doing this, or they are just following these people that are making them feel like, oh, hey, you have been oppressed, just like the leftists did with minorities. Like, hey, you have been oppressed. Like, hey, we really do need to rise up and start a revolution against these evil Jews, just like they did with the white people and BLM and that kind of stuff on the left. And these poor people who, and I feel sorry for a lot of them, because I experienced, all of us did, the same kind of stuff. Like, yeah, we heard on social media and commercials on TV, like totally public stuff, like Biden and Kamala, like so public, about people just openly hating white people. It was horrible.
Yeah.
And it's not that we should be hating the right people, but like all of it's evil. All of it's evil. And a good pastor, a good podcaster, anybody who you are getting any kind of teaching from needs to share that opinion that like all of this is evil, because the purpose of a pastor is to keep the snakes out.
Well, and it boggles me too. I don't see how these guys don't understand and can't see it, that you're doing the exact same thing that you were against. It's like Obi-Wan Kenobi to Anakin, right? Like, you've become the very thing you swore to destroy.
Yeah.
I don't get it, because the way they talk to me, where it's, if you're a Jew, you have a genetic propensity to do this, and it's, there's this race card, it's racial or identity politics. I don't see how they don't understand that you're doing the exact same thing that you were supposedly against, but now it's just like, very recently, by the way, have these guys changed? Like, it seems like within a year. I don't know how long this has actually been brewing in their hearts, but it seemed pretty fast, rapid. Where it's like maybe a year ago that these guys have really changed their rhetoric, where now it's just all about hating on Jews. Like, it's a cool thing to do. It's a cool thing to dunk on Jews in Israel. It's a cool thing to be an ethno nationalist and blame. And I'm just noticing and asking questions, because I think they see too, where they get clout for this. Again, like, this is where the culture is. So if I do this, I'll get, like, Joe Webben has said this too, my podcast will continue to grow. He knows.
Yeah, for sure.
He knows he's getting clout.
And then he makes fun of people like Tobias, because Tobias evidently, said he wanted a platform in America, and he's like, oh yeah, that's evil. You shouldn't be just wanting a platform. It's like, dude, you have a successful podcast and a successful YouTube channel and an online ministry. Like, it's very ironic when people like that make fun of other people for doing literally exactly what they're doing themselves.
And then I don't know if you saw his chat got leaked, where he called his Anon accounts.
I saw it. That was a long time ago. Yeah. Disgusting, despicable, cowardly.
He specifically gave them a narrative to tweet, and then he ended saying it would be a real shame if a bunch of Anon accounts started tweeting this or getting this message out there. Like, wink, wink. I mean, that is just like, dude, like what are you doing, man? Like, how can you not see that you've fallen?
Yeah, that was the thing. Like once I saw that, I was able to give Joel Webben some grace until I saw that he was sicking his minions privately instead of just sharing, attacking Tobias face to face like a man, sending his minions at people like, all right, this is effeminate, this is cowardly. You're saying no more brother wars, and you're sending your little minions to assassinate somebody behind their backs. That's so gay.
It is. Speaking of the Antioch statement, what's very evident though is that how this whole no enemies to the right and no brother wars, because the Antioch statement got it from the book of Galatians, and when you just actually think about what actually happened in the book of Galatians, Paul not only publicly rebuked Peter, but he wrote a letter and then sent it to everybody.
Yeah,
And
calling him
Paul,
out.
yeah, Paul didn't just attack ideas; he attacked people. Like even like not just Peter, but even like Barnabas, he named in that. I think, if my memory serves me correctly, Hymenaeus and Alexander, who apostatized. Demas has forsaken me. Like
Mhm.
Paul was not one to compromise and pull punches. And if you were out of line, what did Paul say in Galatians? If you preach another gospel, let them be cursed or anathema. And it's interesting too because Peter was playing in some sense identity politics, where there were two tables. The Jews were at this table and the Gentiles were at this table. And if you look at it, the ethno-nationalists are telling us, essentially in many ways very similar to that, where we have to just celebrate and put or have natural affections and put these people first, and it doesn't really matter because grace doesn't destroy nature.
Yeah.
And you would never think that would uh you know would be accused of preaching a different gospel. But Paul was saying, no, dude, if you're preaching this, even if an angel from heaven is doing this, let them be accursed. Like this is contrary to what Christ taught us. And that was exactly what Peter was doing, and he got rebuked for it publicly.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, there's the whole thing where, like, one of the issues that we would have, that my team would have with the social justice movement, is that you can't add stuff to the gospel. And I would always be like, well, but we do know that we are supposed to live in a certain way that is consistent with the gospel. And they just believe this like faulty way, this social justice route is consistent with the gospel. But I was always kind of uncomfortable with from my own team, from like the backlash against the social justice people, where it's like, whoa, it's just pure, like the gospel is gospel. You can't like apply it to anything. You can't carry it anywhere. Like the gospel is the gospel. Like it's in this little box and it's isolated and we can't do anything with it. That is what needs to stay uncorrupted. But in truth, like we live out the gospel. The gospel needs to be something. And again, Paul said the same thing about Peter in Galatians. Like he misunderstood the gospel because of this behavior that he had. And so the truth is, like, there is a consistent way that a Christian should be loving others. And if they don't, then they truly do not understand the gospel. Now, I think there's a way to take that too far. And there's a way, like, if you're not doing this every little minutia kind of thing, you're misunderstanding the gospel. I don't think we should carry it there. But there is, to some extent, we have to be living in a way that is consistent with the gospel, or that shows that we actually don't understand it. And that applies to social justice, just like it applies to the weird neo-Nazi crap.
yeah, amen. Any final words you want to leave our viewers with?
Love your neighbor as yourself, and don't take people seriously who try to convince you to do anything else.
Yeah, amen. Well, sincerely appreciate you and helping us navigate through this great episode on the Antioch statement to the viewers. If you didn't watch it, you can go on Spare No Arrows YouTube channel. Are you on Spotify too and Apple?
Yeah, I have audio and video podcast. Yep.
Okay, Instagram too as well.
Yep. Just look up Spare No Arrows. Instagram is Spare No Arrows with underscores between the words.
Awesome. Yeah, an awesome name. And to the viewers, hit the like button of this video. It helps get the algorithm out. Subscribe to Method Ministries, and if you can, share this video as well. Thanks for tuning in, Cody. Thanks again, man. It was a real pleasure. And take care to the audience, and God bless.